We often hear the word startup. It shows up in headlines, in investor decks, on social media profiles. It's become a buzzword, tossed around like a promise of something new, something ambitious, maybe even something revolutionary. But stop for a moment. What is a startup? It's not just any small business with a laptop and a dream. It's not a cafe with clever branding or a shop that just opened down the street. A startup is something else, something sharper, something riskier, more deliberate. A startup is born under uncertainty. It lives where the rules haven't been written yet. It doesn't settle for how things are. It dares to ask, what could be better? And then it builds that thing from scratch. Not with certainty, not with safety, but with obsession, velocity, and belief. Startups don't just create products, they create change. They rewire industries, they force the economy to adapt or be left behind. Startups are society's wild cards, and wild cards don't follow the rules, they remake them. But here's the question we're really asking. In a world where innovation drives prosperity, where the smallest teams can spark the biggest waves, how does a country like Latvia compete? How does a nation not known for tech giants or billion-dollar exits tap into the raw, untamed force of startups? What's holding it back? And more importantly, what could unlock it? The word startup gets thrown around a lot. But what is it really? There is no single universal definition. But zoom in, and four core traits emerge across continents, markets, and mindsets. Innovation. Startups don't repeat what already exists, they solve problems in new ways. Risk. They're built on uncertainty. There is no safety net, no guarantees. Growth. They're not content with staying small. They aim to scale fast. Youth. Most are under 10 years old. Many don't live past year 5. These aren't cozy corner shops. Startups are experimental machines. Small teams, tight budgets, huge ambition. They're not playing it safe. They're playing for impact. And globally, they're reshaping everything. In the US, startups contribute nearly 44% of all economic activity. In India, startups are estimated to drive 10% of national GDP, from fintech in Mumbai to AI in Hyderabad. Europe now boasts over 130 unicorns, privately held companies valued at over $1 billion. The startup economy worldwide is valued at over 3 trillion, roughly the size of the G7's smallest member economies. This isn't niche, it's foundational. Startups create jobs, challenge monopolies, push industries to evolve. They're the R&D department of the future, and they do it faster, leaner, and often smarter than their corporate counterparts. Eric Rice puts it plainly. A startup is a human institution designed to create new products and services under conditions of extreme uncertainty. That uncertainty is their oxygen. Startups thrive in chaos. They test, fail, pivot, try again. And if they get it right, they don't just succeed, They reshape the world. So, when we talk about startups, we're not just talking about business. We're talking about potential. The potential to do what corporations can. The potential to build what governments won't. The potential to solve problems no one else is even looking at yet. And more often than not, that potential starts with nothing more than an idea and the will to see if it works. Every startup begins the same way, with nothing. No money, no certainty, just a hunch. A sense that something could be better, and the belief that you might be the one to fix it. This is the startup lifecycle, a brutal, beautiful path from idea to impact. Stage 1, creation, the spark. This is where everything starts. A problem is spotted, often personal, often frustrating. A solution forms. It may not be perfect. It's probably not feasible yet, but it's clear enough to chase. Here founders explore the opportunity space. They scan the market, size the gap, imagine the product. There is no formal structure, no team, just questions. What problem am I solving? Who needs this? Why hasn't someone done it better? This stage is all about the problem market fit, not yet product market fit. According to startup theorist Saraswati, this phase is pure effectuation. Working with what you have, not what you wish you had. It's grounded in action, not fantasy. Stage 2, development, the fight. Now the vision collides with reality. A prototype is built, a minimum viable product, or MVP. It's ugly, it's incomplete, but it's just enough to test a real-world response. The team grows, feedback rolls in, things break, ideas evolve. This is where learning velocity matters more than execution perfection. Startups in this phase live by the build, measure, learn loop, a method defined by lean startup theory. You don't just build something and hope it works. You build, you test, you learn, you adapt. Here, 90% of startups fail. Why? Poor market timing, no real demand, lack of differentiation, or simply they run out of time and cash. Startup scholar Steve Blank says it best. Startups are not smaller versions of big companies. They are temporary organizations in search of a scalable business model. Stage 3, market, the scale. If the idea survives the gauntlet, now comes the sprint. Product market fit is real. Customers are responding. The goal shifts from building the product to building the business. Teams formalize, structures emerge, revenue matters now. So does retention. This is where the startup has to choose: grow fast or die slower. VCs call this phase the go-to-market engine. Everything you've learned now needs to scale without breaking. Stage 4, exit, the change. Eventually, every startup faces an end. Some are acquired, some go public, some quietly shut their doors. After this point, many no longer qualify as startups. They evolve or dissolve. It's debated whether exit is even part of the life cycle or the moment the startup ceases to be a startup. Each stage brings its own risk, rules, and rhythm. From raw idea to real-world impact, the journey is anything but linear. There are detours, pivots, implosions, but also growth, transformation, legacy. And here's the truth. For every startup that becomes a unicorn, thousands fade quietly into the background. They don't fail because the idea was bad, they fail because the system failed them. No funding, no mentorship, no space to breathe. And that's why startup ecosystems matter, because between vision and market, there are barriers, big ones. And in countries like Latvia, those barriers can be the difference between a thriving innovation economy and a graveyard of great ideas. At the heart of every successful startup lies one thing: not luck, not hype, innovation. But not just any kind, commercial innovation. It's not enough to invent something clever. You have to invent something useful, desirable, and ultimately sellable. That's what commercial innovation really means: solving a real problem in a way people are willing to pay for. Innovation isn't always a flying car. Sometimes it's just writing your name on a Coke bottle. The product didn't change, but the experience did, and that created value. Technically, innovation is when invention meets impact, when a novel idea becomes a working solution and enters the market. It doesn't matter if you've built a revolutionary engine, if no one uses it, it's not an innovation. In startup theory, this distinction is everything. There are many phases of innovation: incremental innovation, small, continuous improvements to an existing product; disruptive innovation, totally new way that redefines the rules. Think Netflix versus Blockbuster, Uber versus taxis. Sustaining innovation, improvements that help dominant players stay ahead. Architectural innovation, rearranging existing components to create new systems. Radical innovation, brand new ideas, often with huge uncertainty and massive impact. Each has its place, but in the world of startups, it's disruption and radical innovation that moves the needle. Because startups aren't optimizing the old, they're challenging it or replacing it. So what fuels commercial innovation? Let's break it down. First, creative vision. Startups begin by seeing differently. Where others see a norm, startups see an opportunity. This isn't just creativity, it's insight, recognizing unmet needs, latent demand, or invisible inefficiencies. Second, research and development. Great ideas need structure. They need testing, prototyping, iteration. R&D bridges imagination and implementation. It's where ideas become tangible. Third, market fit. Does the product solve a real job? Would people miss it if it disappeared? Startups use models like jobs to be done to uncover what customers really need, often before they know it themselves. 4. Scalability. A product isn't innovative if it can't grow. Can it serve 1,000 people? 1,000,000? Scalability is what separates a clever project from a transformative startup. 5. Customer-centric design. Startups don't just build products, they build with users. This means constant feedback loops, testing assumptions, and delivering value that resonates, not just impresses. 6. Strategic technology use. AI, IoT, blockchain, clean tech, AR, quantum computing. These aren't buzzwords, they're tools, if used right. Technology amplifies good ideas, but it can't replace them. Innovation is not tech for tech's sake. You don't succeed because you used AI. You succeed because you used AI intelligently to solve a problem better than anyone else. And here's the paradox. Startups can have groundbreaking ideas, but without the right ecosystem, those ideas stay stuck. Innovation alone isn't enough. None of the system around it are broken. You can build a future, but if no one funds it, mentors it, scales it, it dies in the lab. That's the reality we're heading towards now. Because innovation doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens in ecosystems. And that's where Latvia's biggest challenge begins. And that brings us to Latvia. Latvia is in Silicon Valley, and it doesn't need to be. Perched between the Nordics and Eastern Europe, this small Baltic nation is uniquely positioned, digitally advanced, entrepreneurially curious, and strategically integrated into the EU. Fiber optic internet stretches across the country, tech talent is on the rise, English is widely spoken, and its startups have access to over 400 million consumers across the single market. Latvia has the ingredients, but doesn't have the recipe. To build a thriving startup ecosystem, three focuses must align. Support infrastructure, systems that nurture ideas into ventures. Capital flows, funding that allows startups to survive, iterate, and grow. Cultural mindset, a tolerance for risk, experimentation, and failure. Latvia has made promising moves in all three, but in the startup world, effort alone doesn't win. Execution does. So let's begin at what is working. Let's look at the framework Latvia is building. In recent years, Latvia has built a visible ecosystem of institutions aimed at supporting startups. Key players include LIA, the Investment and Development Agency of Latvia, a central pillar of offering grants, accelerator support, and promotions abroad. Startup Law, providing income tax relief and up to 45% salary co-financing for qualifying startups. Startup Visa, created to attract foreign founders and high potential talent from outside the EU. Incubators and accelerators, from build it and commercialization reactor to overkill ventures and startup wise guys, helping early stage teams test, refine, and launch. Flagship events like TechChill, one of the most recognized startup conferences in the Baltics, showcasing regional talent and connecting founders with investors. In 2023, the Latvian government invested over 4 million euros into the startup ecosystem. That sounds like a real commitment. Or is it? Context matters. Latvia's GDP covers around 40 billion euros. So this 4 million euros, while helpful, represents just 0.01% of national output. Symbolic? Yes. Strategic? Arguably. Sufficient? Not quite. Think of Latvia as a startup itself. Would you fund a high potential venture with barely 0.01% of its operating budget? Would that give the edge to compete, grow, and succeed in a crowded global market? Probably not. This isn't a critique of effort, it's a reflection on scale. The structure is here, the energy is here, but the fire needs fuel. Because in the world of startups, timing and momentum are everything. Without enough power early on, even the smartest systems can stall. And that brings us to a deeper issue. Not just how much support exists, but how it's being delivered. Because even with these institutions in place, something is missing. Alignment, clarity, connectivity. The next step for Latvia's startup landscape isn't just expanding, it's integrating. On paper, Latvia's startup support looks structured. You've got agencies, laws, events, programs designed to fund, mentor, and connect. But behind the branding, something isn't clicking. Because in practice, it's fragmented, disconnected, often reactive rather than strategic. Funds are dispersed widely across events, meetups, hackathons, but the core needs of early stage startups, they often go unmet. Capital to survive those first 12 months, coaching from real entrepreneurs, not just consultants, customer access to validate and sell their product. And without those fundamentals, the rest becomes noise. Take the startup law, a genuinely progressive policy. It offers 0% income tax, covers up to 45% of salaries. That's real support in theory, but in practice, it's wrapped in red tape, complex eligibility criteria, documentation overload, confusion around definitions, weeks, sometimes months of waiting. Startups move fast, bureaucracy doesn't. The result? Many founders skip it altogether. They either don't qualify or don't bother. Then there's the startup visa. Originally meant to attract global founders, the intention was noble, but execution easily gained. In one case, dozens of startups registered in a single vacant office building in Riga. No teams, no products, no plans, just paperwork. It wasn't innovation, it was immigration arbitrage. Trust was broken. Rules were tightened, and legitimate founders were left in limbo. Here's what's often forgotten. Most real startups in Latvia aren't flashy. They're small, 2 to 4 people, working after hours, bootstrapping every decision. These teams don't have departments. They don't have lobbyists. They don't have time to chase 5 different grant programs with 10 different application forms. They need direct help, fast capital, smart feedback, room to move. But funding often flows towards visibility, not viability. Large-scale events, ecosystem reports, promotional campaigns. Meanwhile, the startups themselves, those actually building products, scrape by. The system emphasizes activity over impact, volume over value, optics over outcomes. That's the gap. And when support is structured to look good rather than do good, founders start looking elsewhere. Estonia, Berlin, Amsterdam, places where support means more than a slogan. Latvia doesn't lack ambition. It lacks alignment. And if that doesn't change, even the best ideas may never get the chance to grow. Let's talk about results. Not slogans, not stories, numbers. Because numbers don't lie. According to the European Innovation Scoreboard, Latvian ranks 42nd globally in innovation performance, 25th out of 27 EU countries. Only Romania and Bulgaria trail behind, and this ranking isn't a fluke, it's a pattern. Latvia has hovered near the bottom of the innovation index for nearly a decade, despite increasing investment, rising startup activity, and growing participation in EU programs. From 2014 to 2020, Latvia received over 681 million euros in innovation funding. Another 721 million euros is already planned for 2021 to 2027. That's over 1.4 billion euros committed to boosting innovation. So, where is the impact? Why aren't we seeing Latvia rise in the rankings? The answer lies not in the lack of activity, but in how that activity is structured. There's a dangerous trend in Latvia's innovation approach, confusing movement with momentum. Funding gets spent, reports are filled, events happen, slides are made, press photos are taken, but very few of these actions are tied to long-term outcomes. It's about showing something was done, even if that something didn't move the needle. A founder receives 10,000 grand. It makes the headlines, it ticks a box. But there is no follow-up, no runaway, no strategic mentorship, no path to scale. The system rewards the start, but forgets about the finish. Instead of asking, how many startups did we fund this year? We should be asking, how many scaled beyond Latvia? How many created sustainable jobs? How many received follow-on investment? How many turned public money into market-ready solutions? Compare that with Estonia. Smaller population, fewer resources, more exits, more unicorns, more international funding. Why? Because Estonia tracks outcomes. It funds based on results, builds systems around performance, not presence, has a common mindset. Of course, they had the Skype mafia. However, they're moving forward. In Latvia, the ecosystem often rewards compliance. Did you host the workshop? Did you submit the report? Did you tick the box? Then that's enough. Short-term visibility becomes the goal instead of long-term value. And this isn't just inefficient. It's dangerous. It breeds false positives. Startups that look alive on paper, but in reality have no product, no traction, no future. They exist to satisfy KPIs, not solve real problems, and that creates an illusion of progress. Innovation is being measured by the wrong yardstick. Activity isn't progress. Presence isn't performance. And money spent doesn't equal value created. Until that changes, Latvia will keep investing in innovation without ever seeing innovation invest back in Latvia. Latvia's deepest resource is its people. Bright, ambitious, tech-savvy. Yet every year, hundreds of those people leave. Why? Brain drain in action. Top graduates trade Riga for Berlin's booming AI labs. Promising founders ship their MVPs to Tallinn or London, chasing deeper pockets. Skilled software engineers sign on to Scandinavian unicorns, never to return. And it's not just greener pastures they pursue. It's stability, belief, dreams that feel more possible elsewhere. One, capital, an illusion of progress. On paper, capital flows. You'll see 10,000 grants awarded, 50,000 euro prizes distributed, match funding programs launched. But here's the truth. That money is a drop in the ocean. Early stage funding in Latvia rarely exceeds 50,000 euros per team, just enough for 6 months of survival, not scale. No deep-pocketed angles, no local micro VCs ready to double down. Most funding rounds are actually loans or repayable grants, with no risk appetite behind them. The result, founders scramble for every euro, working 2 jobs, burning out long before they hit product market fit. 2, talent. Not just leaving, fleeing risk. Leaving isn't just about money, it's about risk appetite. In Silicon Valley, taking a bet on yourself is celebrated. You fail, you try again. People line up to back your next venture. In Latvia, The opposite tone prevails. Failure is shame. Bankruptcy is social stigma. I told you so lingers louder than what did you learn? So smart. Risk-hungry talent opts out, choosing safe salaries over 50-50 gambles on dreams. Free culture. Fear over freedom. Startups require permission to fail. They thrive on experimentation, pivoting, rough prototypes, messy progress. But in a risk-averse culture, grants are tied to rigid milestones. Mentors say, be careful, not go build. Banks demand collateral, not character. This kills initiative at the root. Instead of, what if we tried this? Teams here, they'll break the rules. 4. The vicious cycle. Less capital means smaller teams. Smaller teams means slower progress. Slower progress breeds risk aversion. Risk aversion pushes talent away. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and founders' worst enemy. Naturally, investors don't consider this a serious market. It doesn't grow. 5. Breaking the cycle. A path forward. This can change. If the ecosystem dares to shift. Seed stage boosts. Create dedicated seed funds, 100,000, 300,000 euro checks, with no strings, follow-on options. Encourage angels collectively. Pool local high net worth individuals into small syndicates. Normalize smart failure. Host lessons learned nights. Founders share flops, not just wins. Celebrate the smartest pivots, not just the slickest pitches. 3. Risk-friendly policy. Introduce fail-safe, temporary bankruptcy shields for first-time small-scale ventures. Fast-track simple grants with outcomes-based tranches, rewarding progress, not paperwork. Talent management programs. Offer return grants or relocation support for Latvians abroad to found or join startups here. Tie stipend programs to local ventures. Students work on real startups, not hypothetical projects. Cultural champions. Elevate local success stories. Young founders who scaled internationally and returned. Build mentorship platforms pairing seasoned entrepreneurs abroad with Latvian teams. Latvia can keep its brightest minds by funding their dreams properly, by giving them room to fail, and by building a culture that celebrates each step forward or backward. Because real innovation needs 3 things: people who dare, money that trusts, and a culture that cheers, not jeers, when something new is tried. If Latvia embraces this, its next generation of founders won't feel the need to leave. They'll stay and build something the world can't ignore. Let's pause and reflect. Startups are powerful engines of economic growth. Commercial innovation turns ideas into impact. Latvia has support structures, but they're underfunded, fragmented, and poorly optimized. A weak culture of failure and brain drain are bleeding the ecosystem of its strongest assets. So the question becomes, can Latvia turn this around? Can it become not just a place where startups exist, but where they excel? Latvia doesn't need to reinvent the wheel. It needs to stop running on square ones. After surveying the data, analyzing the policies, and speaking with founders, investors, mentors, one thing is crystal clear. The potential is there. But so are the barriers. And they're not hypothetical. They're real, they're structural, they're cultural, and they're holding the ecosystem back. Let's break them down and then build them back up. Latvia's startup ecosystem doesn't lack talent. It doesn't lack ambition. It lacks a clear path forward. And it's not one big flaw. It's 6 fractures, deep, structural, and compounding. Let's break them open. 1 is fragmentation. a system without a spine. The Latvian startup ecosystem is scattered, disconnected, ungoverned. Founders don't know where to go, investors don't know who to trust, mentors are either overstretched or totally absent. There is no central platform, no unifying agenda. Instead, everyone is building in silos, competing for the same silvers of funding, repeating the same pilot events, pushing their own KPIs instead of collective goals. The result: duplication, confusion, wasted energy. Startup needs a roadmap. Latvia gives it a maze. 2 is shallow mentorship, advice without substance. Mentorship in Latvia is often ceremonial. You meet someone once, they say, "Great pitch," offer vague advice, then disappear. No real feedback, no accountability, no skin in the game. It's mentorship that exists for the report, not for the startup. Founders aren't looking for praise. They're looking for someone who's built something real, who can challenge them, guide them, question them. Without that, they're walking blind. Free mismatch in education. Degrees without delivery. Latvia's universities produce diplomas, but rarely founders. There's a gulf between academic theory and entrepreneurial execution. Students memorize models without testing them. Business plans are written, never really pitched. Innovation courses are optional. Real startups, tools like customer discovery, rapid prototyping, and agile validation rarely are taught. So graduates leave well credentialed but under-equipped for the chaos of real-world entrepreneurship. Then there is bureaucracy, the innovation killer. Latvia's startup policies look modern, but feel medieval. Want a grant? Prepare for weeks of paperwork. Need approval? Wait in line behind legacy institutions with better lawyers. Want to apply for startup law benefits? You'll need to prove educational status, employee salary thresholds, tax history, R&D budget, structures, and even then there's no guarantee. Startups need speed. The system gives them slow lanes and sinkholes, so founders stop applying, or worse, they start looking abroad. There are funding bottlenecks, dry wells in a rainstorm. Yes, funding exists in Latvia, but it's hard to find, harder to access, and rarely risk-friendly. Grants are small, rigid, and slow. Banks want guarantees, something no startup can provide. VC activity is minimal, mostly passive. Angel networks are underdeveloped if they exist at all. The result: talented teams spend more time chasing cash than building products, and most of them burn out before they even validate their idea. Fear of failure is the cultural poison. Here, failure doesn't teach you, it brands you. Latvia's culture is still haunted by post-Soviet mindset. Don't take risks. Don't stand out. Don't mess up. So when a startup collapses, the whispers begin. He failed. She wasted their money. They should have known better. No one says they've learned something. No one says, what will they build next? So smart people play it safe, or leave, or never try at all. And these barriers, they're not isolated, they multiply. When mentorship is shallow, founders stay confused. When funding is scarce, they play it safe. When the culture punishes risk, the best talent disappears. You can't scale a startup when your environment is telling you not to try. And yet, despite this, startups do emerge. They fight harder, scrape by, refuse to quit. But why should success feel like defiance? Why should building something good feel like breaking the rules? Latvia is not short on brains, it's short on belief, and systems that actually back it up. Even in a fractured ecosystem, silver linings glimmer. Latvia's startup scene may be young, but that means it's malleable. Not calcified by decades of bureaucracy, it can pivot faster than older hubs can even blink. Here are the real strengths you can build on, backed by data, down-to-earth examples, and a dose of honest critique. On institutional momentum, but room to grow. Funding doubled, kind of. The Ministry of Economics increased its direct support startup budget from €200,000 in 2023 to €400,000 in 2024. Reality check, well, that extra 200,000 still buys roughly 20 small grants at 10,000 each, enough to get a prototype to MVP, but not nearly enough to fuel a full product launch or hire critical talent. Well, there are some good things. The dark horse, the Norway grants. Channel has injected 1.03 million earmarked for clean tech and deep tech reimbursement. If startups can navigate its complex application process, they can claim up to 85% of project costs. Startup law adoption is also good. Since 2017, over 2,459 companies have claimed benefits, tax relief or salary co-financing under the startup law. Only about 10% of those have gone on to raise Series A style rounds. However, streamlining applications could unlock hundreds more that never bothered to apply. On public-private collaborations, there is emerging but untapped. LIA, the Startup Wise Guys, the Investment and Development Agency has partnered with veteran accelerators like Startup Wise Guys, sending 10 Latvian teams to Tallinn's Demo Day in 2024. Two of those alumni raised follow-on funding from Nordic VCs. Just 10 teams out of thousands? Imagine the impact if LIA backed 50 or co-invested in local acceleration programs. Commercialization Reactor is, a deep tech incubator in Riga that accepted 15 projects in its first cohort. Already, one spin-out is prototyping a patented battery cooling system for EVs. This model can scale into sector-specific reactors, example medtech or agritech, to match global accelerators. Grassroots energy, real founders, real drive, TechChill and hackathons. TechChill, in 2024 drew 850 attendees from 20 countries, double the 2020 numbers. Hackathon like Campus Hack, see 200 students racing to build MVPs in 48 hours. Beyond the hype, a quarter of Campus Hack finalists have kept their prototypes alive, forming teams, registering companies, and even winning small grants. Labs of Latvia, Latvia's only dedicated startup news outlet, publishing 150 stories a year on local success, funding rounds, and community events. Why it matters? Storytelling builds credibility. When global media see real exits like Printify's 225 million raised in 2021, they start to pay attention here too. There's also cost comprehensiveness, a measurable edge. Lower burn rates. Average monthly operating costs for a free-person startup in Riga run 30 to 40% below those in Helsinki or Warsaw. That is a leverage point. With just 5,000 euros per month, teams can sustain headcounts that would cost 8,000 elsewhere. Of course, missing links, few relocation incentives do exist. Imagine a return to Riga grant that covers rent for 6 months to lure back Latvians abroad. Skilled tech talent is a genuine article. High ICT proficiency is there. Latvia ranks 7th in the EU for adult digital skills, DESI index. University graduates include 500 plus IT degrees per year. It's untapped. Only 10% of those graduates enter startups. The rest join banks, telecoms, or move abroad. The path forward is to embed real startup projects into capstones courses, offer co-op placements that place students directly into local ventures for credit, and niche success stories are proof of concept. Princify, founded in Riga in 2015, now valued at 1.5 billion euros, a genuine Baltic unicorn. SonarWorks, audio calibration software adopted by studios worldwide, raised 30 million across multiple rounds. The Dog Group, the original social network, pivoted into an investor and accelerator, funding 20 plus tech startups since 2018. These aren't one-offs, they're proof. With the right push, Latvian ventures can and do compete globally. Latvia's strengths are real, but often hidden in the noise of low-scale programs and half measures. The question isn't if Latvia can succeed, it's how quickly it can amplify what's already working and stop celebrating mere activity over measurable lasting impact. In the next section, we'll turn to concrete solutions, the moves that can turn these silver linings into gold. It's time to stop admiring the problem. Let's talk about what actually works. What Latvia must do to become more than a startup slogan, to become a startup force. Based on expert interviews, comparative ecosystems, and direct insights from founders, here's what needs to change. Create a unified startup governance platform. Latvia's ecosystem is fractured. Everyone's talking, but no one's aligned. What it needs is a Startup Latvia platform, an independent body with teeth, not just titles. This platform would coordinate policy across ministries, LIA, accelerators, and VC funds. Serve as a central knowledge hub. No more founders lost in 50 grand stabs. Maintain an open real-time ecosystem map with live programs, active mentors, and investor preferences. Host quarterly roundtables with ecosystem leaders, founders, and educators. Think Latvia's startup Estonia, but built on transparency, execution, and inclusion. Then we also need reforming the startup law access. Startup law incentives should be rocket fuel, not red tape. Fixes include digitalized application and tracking process. Remove degree-based barriers. Many great founders never finish formal education. Replace it with proof of skill or real traction. Streamline benefits by offering automated eligibility screening. If a startup fits the mold, unlock the benefits immediately, not 6 months later. Also consider extending salary co-financing beyond 1 year for high potential companies with clear follow-on traction. Support shouldn't be unlocked by status. It should be unlocked by potential. We also need scaling the early stage investments smartly. 4 million euro investments won't build an ecosystem. It barely funds a dozen prototypes. Latvia must move from symbolic supports to strategic capital injection. 1.5% of GDP towards innovation, aligned with EU benchmarks. 50,000 to 300,000 seat tickets via government-backed microfunds, performance-based tranches. If the startup hits traction, unlock next stage funding. Create a founders guarantee fund, government-backed microloans for founders who need that extra 10,000, 30,000 of runway but don't qualify for a VC round. Bonus, entrepreneurship fellowships. Support ambitious individuals working in traditional industries to prototype new ventures with 6 months stipends and protected time. Build a founder-centric culture. Founders are not just participants, they are the reason the ecosystem exists. To shift the culture, Latvia must host failure nights and publish pivot stories. Normalize trying, not just succeeding. Launch an annual founder fellowship offering 3 months of salary plus coaching for 10 promising early stage entrepreneurs with ideas but no savings. Tie mentors to outcomes. Reward those who stick with teams long term, not just pop in for a panel. Culture doesn't change with slogans, it changes when the best talent sees that risk is rewarded, not punished. Also, fix the talent pipeline at the source. Universities are still producing graduates from the past, not the future. It's time to revive education. Mandatory 2-credit entrepreneurship modules in all bachelor programs as well, especially STEM. Focus on ideation, MVP building and pitching. Build real university startup pipelines. Students earn credit by working on active ventures, not simulations. Set up quarterly industry university startup roundtables where businesses, leaders challenge students to prototype solutions, then co-develop them. And not every student must be a founder. Some should become the first hires of a startup. Design curriculum with both in mind. We should diversify the funding ecosystem. Latvia's capital game is too narrow. There are solutions. Establish local angel syndicates with matched public funding. Enable peer-to-peer lending and equity platforms that let citizens invest 500 to 5,000 into local startups. Encourage crowdfunding via matched risk funds. If a project raises 10,000 from the public, the government matches it one-on-one. Take it into a diaspora capital, co-investment pools from Latvians abroad who want to support ventures at home. Measure what matters. Stop tracking vanity metrics. Latvia should shift its KPI frameworks towards real, lasting indicators. Scale ventures, export-ready products, talent retention, IP filling, follow-on investment, team survivability after 2 years, and implement a startup success tracker. A live dashboard, updated quarterly, with real outcomes, not PR spins. Create a real platform for founder engagement. Here's the truth no one wants to admit. In person, Latvia's startup energy is strong, but online it disappears. You go to an event, everyone talks, then Monday comes and it's silence. That's the curse. The fix, build a community platform where founders, mentors, investors, and policy leaders can interact in real time. Verified members, startup profiles matched with open calls and mentors, sector-based matching, a built-in ask for help feature that routes urgent questions to real answers. It's hard, yes, but nothing great was ever easy. None of these fixes are impossible. They're not utopian. They're doable if the will exists. Latvia doesn't need more events, it needs infrastructure. It doesn't need more buzzwords, it needs execution. It doesn't need to copy others. It needs to finally back its own people with capital, culture, and conviction. The raw materials are there. The future is waiting. What's missing now is the move. If Latvia gets this right, the rewards will ripple far beyond its borders. More jobs, more exports, more founders who stay because they can succeed here. More global headlines that begin not in Berlin, not in London, but in Riga. Imagine a startup launches in dorm room at RTU and lands Series A funding 6 months later from Latvian angels. Imagine students build real companies during university, backed by real customers and coached by real founders. Imagine investors, regional, diaspora, even global, fighting for a seat at Latvia's next demo day. Imagine Riga, not as a stepping stone, but as a destination. A lean, focused, founder-powered ecosystem, small in size, but rich in depth, welcoming ideas, funding them wisely, and giving them room to breathe, fail, evolve, and thrive. The world doesn't need another startup hub. It needs a smarter one. Latvia can be that place if it wants to be. We've seen the barriers. We've seen the enablers. We've heard from the people building, breaking, and trying. Again. So what have we learned? Latvia doesn't lack ambition. It doesn't lack people, talent, or vision. What it lacks is alignment. It lacks a system that connects intentions with execution, a system that says, you don't just want innovation, we'll build a world around it. Startups don't happen in a vacuum. They're built by ecosystems. And ecosystems, they need more than press releases. They need belief, structure, capital that flows, policies that follow speed, and a culture that celebrates trying as much as winning. Because innovation isn't a luxury, it's a survival strategy. Startups are how countries stay relevant, how they build resilience, how they shape their own future. Instead of watching it be shaped elsewhere, Latvia has a choice. It can tinker, host more events, repeat more promises, or it can step up, not just to join the innovation race, but to lead it on its own terms. Build infrastructure that matters, fund talent like it matters, treat founders like they matter, because they do. If Latvia commits fully, urgently, together, this won't just be a startup ecosystem, it will be a launchpad for ideas, for growth, for a generation that refuses to wait their turn. The future doesn't happen to countries, it's built by them. So build it, here, now, together.